The Galactic Council's fleet loomed over Earth, poised to reduce the planet to smoldering rubble if humanity did not submit to alien rule within 24 hours. While Thule, Cardassian fleet commander, urged an immediate attack, the Council restrained him, underestimating human ingenuity and will to survive. Global turmoil and panic erupted as the alien ultimatum reached Earth. Riots raged. People fled cities in droves, and militaries mobilized, bracing for alien assault. Besieged by demands for action, the U.S. president summoned an eccentric recluse, brilliant physicist Dr. Darren Webb. The disheveled, wild-eyed Webb burst into the Situation Room and slapped down blueprints for a ludicrous superweapon he had secretly designed. A skyscraper-sized railgun built into the moon itself, capable of slinging continent-crushing slugs at relativistic speeds. Jaws dropped. The Joint Chiefs scoffed. "It's this or annihilation, Mr. President," Webb said gravely. "Those alien bastards won't know what hit them." With the doomsday clock ticking, a desperate president convinced world leaders to set aside squabbles and throw resources into the insane moon gun scheme. Construction ships blasted moonward, crammed with workers and equipment. Lunar colonies became frenzied anthills as engineers bored tunnels, welded gargantuan structures, and jury-rigged power reactors with reckless abandon. As Judgment Hour arrived, humanity collectively held its breath. 7 billion souls united in terror and fragile hope. Every eye fixed on the completed lunar railgun, now aimed squarely at the Cardassian armada, skulking at the fringes of the solar system. In mission control, a grim president nodded to Dr. Webb. Webb's finger hovered over a large red button. "For Earth," he whispered, and pushed it. A thunderous boom echoed through the lunar base as Webb smacked his palm on the button. The railgun hummed to life, power surging from the moon's core through immense superconducting cables. Capacitors crackled with barely contained energy until the barrel crackled with blue lightning. On the bridge of the Cardassian flagship, Thule sneered at the distant moon, not comprehending the danger. Suddenly a blinding flash erupted from the lunar surface as a nickel-iron asteroid burst forth at incomprehensible speed, crossing the void in seconds. Thule's eyes widened in disbelief as the projectile punched through the fleet's shields like they weren't even there. The asteroid obliterated a third of the ships in a silent explosion that hurled molten shrapnel in all directions, shredding hulls and ending countless lives. Cheers rang out in mission control as the first images of the devastation reached Earth. Crowds in the streets hugged and wept with relief, daring to believe they might survive. But Webb and the leaders knew it was nowhere near the end. "Get that gun reloaded now," Webb barked at the engineers. "They'll be coming for us with everything they have left." Thule pounded his fist on the arm of his chair, purple blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. "All ships, converge on that weapon and destroy it at any cost." His voice shook with rage and humiliation. The Cardassian fleet surged forward, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The railgun fired again and again, each shot vaporizing multiple ships. But the faster human weapon couldn't track every target, and the aliens closed in, raining fire on the lunar fortifications and Earth itself. Cities crumbled under the onslaught, fire and rubble filling the streets. The lunar bases shuddered as antimatter bombs pummeled the surface, breaching domes and spilling defenders into the vacuum. Webb's hands flew over the controls, desperately trying to adapt the railgun's targeting to the aliens' attack patterns. He pored over screens of telemetry, searching for any weakness to exploit. Then it hit him. The Cardassians used strict geometric formations, as if unable to break from doctrine even in the face of annihilation. "I've got it!" Webb shouted. "Feed these coordinates to the gun, now!" The railgun responded, its shots becoming uncannily precise as it predicted the enemy's movements. Alien ships vanished by the dozen, turned to clouds of plasma before they could even react. On his flagship's smoking bridge, Thule gazed at the tactical displays in numb horror as the human weapon tore through his fleet. "Concentrate all fire on that railgun," he screamed. "Ramming speed!" The Cardassian ships hurtled forward, heedless of the mounting losses as they charged headlong at the moon. The space around the moon became a cauldron of destruction as Cardassian ships dueled with human fighters and automated defenses. The railguns swept back and forth, annihilating whole squadrons, but the aliens kept coming. "Firing solution locked!" Webb called out as the railgun hummed with barely restrained power. On the screen, the massed Cardassian fleet loomed terrifyingly close. But at that moment, a dozen alien ships broke through and launched a salvo of pulsing antimatter torpedoes. The projectiles slammed into the railgun's immense barrel, and for an instant, nothing happened. Then a sun-bright fireball consumed the mass driver, hurling molten fragments in all directions. The railgun convulsed, launching its asteroid off into the void before breaking apart completely, scattering jagged shards across the lunar landscape. Thule roared in triumph, but his victory was short-lived. His flagship, torn apart by railgun hits and leaking atmosphere, shuddered and kicked as Earth's gravity caught hold of the hulk. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and crewmen screamed as the crippled vessel tumbled toward fiery oblivion. Webb pulled himself from the rubble of the shattered control room, blinking in the harsh light reflecting off the moon's surface. He stumbled to a viewport and stared numbly at the sky full of falling stars, the burning wrecks of Cardassian ships raining down on Earth. All around him, the other survivors stood in stunned silence, watching the terrible beauty of their Pyrrhic victory. They had done the impossible and destroyed an alien armada, but the cost... Webb swallowed hard as he watched the Cardassian flagship disappear into the atmosphere, knowing its death would bring retribution upon them all. The war was a long way to go. The fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. Webb stared at the smoking ruins of Earth's cities through the cracked viewport. Fires still raged in the distance, casting an eerie glow over the devastated landscape. The stench of burning plastic and fuel permeated the air, a constant reminder of the destruction wrought by the Cardassian attack. "We won the battle, but at what cost?" he muttered, turning to face the grim-faced leaders gathered in the makeshift war room. General Hawkins smacked his head on the table. "Those alien bastards will be back, and we're in no shape to stop them." Webb's eyes glinted with a dangerous light. "Then we take the fight to them first." He pulled up a holographic display, fingers dancing across the controls. A pulsing red dot appeared, orbiting a distant moon. "This is their main supply depot in the sector. We hit it hard. We buy Earth time to rebuild." The room erupted in skeptical murmurs. Admiral Chen spoke up. "With what ship? Our fleet is in tatters." Webb grinned, a hint of madness in his expression. "We use theirs." Hours later, Webb stood before the mangled hulk of the crashed Cardassian flagship. Sparks flew as welders scrambled over its surface, grafting human tech onto alien metal. "How's she looking, Rodriguez?" Webb called out to his chief engineer. Rodriguez wiped sweat from his brow. "She'll fly, but I wouldn't bet my life on her lasting more than one trip." Webb clapped him on the shoulder. "Then we'd better make it count." As the final preparations were made, Webb didn't notice the shadowy figure slipping aboard the newly christened Phoenix. Thule, battered but alive, crept through the ship's corridors, a savage gleam in his alien eyes. The Phoenix lifted off with a groan of protesting metal. Webb gripped the arms of the captain's chair, willing the patchwork vessel to hold together. Beside him, his brother Jake manned the weapons console, face set in unwavering willpower. They were nearing the Cardassian base when alarms blared. Thule burst onto the bridge, flanked by a handful of surviving Cardassian soldiers. "This ship is mine, human filth!" Thule snarled, leveling an alien weapon at Webb's head. Jake leapt into action, tackling one of the Cardassians. The bridge erupted into chaos as human and alien grappled for control. Outside, Cardassian fighters swarmed toward the Phoenix like angry hornets. The ship rocked under their first volley of fire. Webb ducked behind a console, frantically working the ship's controls while dodging energy blasts. "Jake, we need those guns online now." Jake grunted, locked in a life-or-death struggle with Thule. "Bit busy here, bro." The situation looked hopeless. Then Jake's eyes met Webb's, a silent understanding passing between them. For Earth, Jake whispered. He lunged at Thule, tackling the Cardassian leader through an open hatch. Both disappeared into the bowels of the ship. Webb howled in anguish but forced himself to focus. He brought the Phoenix's guns to bear on the supply depot and opened fire. The base erupted in a series of spectacular explosions. Webb punched the engines to full, leaving devastation in his wake. As they fled back to Earth, Webb slumped in his chair, the weight of victory and loss crushing down on him. They'd bought Earth a chance, but the price had been far too high. Little did Webb know, an even greater threat loomed. In the halls of the Galactic Council, outraged voices clamored for action against the upstart humans. The gears of bureaucracy ground into motion, assembling a fleet that would dwarf anything Earth had yet faced. Webb gazed at the battered blue marble of home, knowing the hardest fight still lay ahead. Somehow, he had to unite a fractured world to face the storm that was coming. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos as news of the human attack spread. Councilors pounded their fists on ornate desks, shouting demands for retribution. The Cardassian representative, his face twisted in rage, stood and addressed the assembly. These primitives dare strike at us? We must crush them utterly. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The council president called for order, his amplified voice booming over the din. We will vote on the matter of Earth. All in favor of total war? Every appendage in the room shot up without hesitation. Back on Earth, Webb pored over intel reports in a makeshift war room. His face fell as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. Damn it, we needed more time, he muttered. An aide burst in, breathless. Sir, we've intercepted Cardassian communications. They're mobilizing everything they have against us. Webb's mind raced. Earth's defenses were in shambles, its military decimated. He turned to the grim-faced leaders around him. We hit them hard, but it's not enough. We need to strike again, buy ourselves some breathing room. He outlined his audacious plan, pointing to holographic star charts. Cardassia Prime, their throne world. If we can cripple their superweapon research, we might stand a chance. Skeptical looks met his words, but no one had a better idea. Days later, Webb crouched in the hold of a captured Cardassian scout ship. Around him, Earth's best soldiers and engineers checked weapons and equipment. The vessel shuddered as it dropped out of warp above Cardassia Prime. Stealth systems holding, the pilot reported. We're through the outer defenses. They touched down in an industrial sector. As the team disembarked, alarms began to blare. Webb cursed. Their window of surprise was closing fast. Move, 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 he shouted. The streets erupted in firefights as Cardassian security forces converged. Human commandos ducked behind rubble, exchanging fire with the alien troops. Webb led a small group toward the research facility, plasma bolts sizzling past his head. They blasted their way inside, fighting room to room. In the central lab, Webb's eyes widened at the sight of a massive device crackling with dark energy. Plant the charges, he ordered. We've got to overload this thing. As his engineers worked frantically, waves of Cardassian soldiers poured in. Webb and the others laid down suppressing fire, but they were badly outnumbered. The facility rocked with explosions. Antimatter containment alarms shrieked. Through the chaos strode a familiar figure. Thule, battered but alive, his eyes burning with hatred. Webb, he roared, you'll die here, human. The two leaders clashed in furious hand-to-hand combat as the facility crumbled around them. Webb landed a crushing blow, sending Thule sprawling. It's over, Webb panted. Earth lives to fight another day. He sprinted for the exit as the reactors went critical. The human strike team piled into their ship, lifting off as a blinding explosion consumed the facility. As they fled Cardassian space, Webb stared at the viewscreen, his expression grim. They'd won a victory, but the real fight was just beginning. Somehow he had to unite a battered Earth against the full might of the galaxy bearing down upon them. The battered Cardassian scout ship touched down on Earth's soil with a shudder. Webb stumbled out, his face streaked with grime and sweat. The taste of victory was bitter in his mouth as he surveyed the ruins of what had once been a thriving metropolis. "Get me a secure line to command," he barked at a nearby communications officer. Moments later, he stood before a hastily assembled council of Earth's remaining leaders, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and worry. "The Cardassian superweapon is toast," Webb reported, his voice hoarse. "But it's not enough. The Galactic Council is coming for us with everything they've got." He tapped a few commands on a datapad, projecting a holographic display of the enemy armada. Gasps echoed through the room as the sheer scale of the threat became apparent. "Our current defenses won't cut it," Webb continued, his eyes hard. "We need something big, something they won't expect." He outlined his plan for Fortress Terra, watching as hope kindled in the eyes of those around him. As the council adjourned, Webb felt a hand on his shoulder. It was General Hawkins, his face etched with lines of worry. "This is one hell of a gamble, Webb," Hawkins said quietly. Webb nodded, his fists tight. "It's the only play we've got." The next weeks were a blur of frenetic activity. Factories churned out weaponry day and night, the air filled with the constant hum of machinery. Webb stood on a catwalk overlooking a massive assembly line, watching as workers pieced together salvaged Cardassian tech with human ingenuity. In orbit, the framework of Fortress Terra took shape. Webb peered through a viewport on the lunar surface, his breath fogging the glass as he watched robotic drones weld massive support struts into place. "Faster," he muttered, knowing every second counted. Alarms blared, shattering the tense silence. Webb's blood ran cold as he saw the tactical display light up with incoming Cardassian ships. "No," he breathed. "Not now. Not when we're so close." He watched in horror as the first volley of Cardassian fire tore through Fortress Terra's unfinished superstructure. Massive chunks of debris spun off into space, each representing countless hours of work and humanity's dwindling hope. Webb's fists clenched as he saw Earth itself light up under the Cardassian bombardment. Cities burned, military installations crumbled, and the fruits of humanity's desperate labor were reduced to ash in moments. As the barrage continued, Webb's mind raced. They needed a new plan, and fast. He turned to his assembled staff, their faces pale with shock and fear. "Get me every surviving ship captain and military commander," Webb ordered, his voice steely. "We're not done yet. Not by a long shot." Webb's fingers flew across the command console, his eyes darting between tactical displays. The remnants of Earth's defense fleet limped back towards the planet's protective embrace, leaving trails of debris and vented atmosphere in their wake. "Status report!" Webb barked, his voice raw from hours of shouting orders. A junior officer responded, her uniform singed and torn. "Sir, we've lost contact with half our ships. The Cardassians are pressing their advantage." Webb hit his fist on the console. "Damn it, we need more time." He keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for emergency maneuvers. We're buying Earth a few more minutes." The battered command ship shuddered as Webb pushed its engines beyond their limits. He steered the vessel on an intercept course with Grull's flagship, hoping to draw fire away from the retreating human forces. In the chaotic space above Earth, Jake Mercer fought a losing battle with his crippled fighter. Warning klaxons blared as system after system failed. He gritted his teeth, wrestling with unresponsive controls as the craft plummeted towards the planet's atmosphere. "Come on, you piece of junk," Mercer growled, his hands white-knuckled on the stick. He toggled his comm, praying it still functioned. "Webb, if you can hear me, I'm going down. Don't let these bastards win." Static crackled. Then Webb's voice came through, distorted but recognizable. "Jake, hang on, we're coming for you." Mercer laughed bitterly. "No time, old friend. Just remember what we fought for." As Mercer's fighter streaked through the upper atmosphere, Webb watched helplessly from the command deck. He turned to his crew, his face a mask of grim perseverance. "Launch everything we've got left. Every fighter, every missile. I want those Cardassian ships pushed back or blown to hell." Earth's remaining defenses sprang to life. Ground-based laser batteries lanced into orbit, joined by swarms of missiles launched from hidden silos. The few surviving human fighters threw themselves at the Cardassian ships with reckless abandon. Webb's command ship shook violently as Cardassian weapons fire found its mark. He clung to his station, shouting orders over the din of battle. Concentrate fire on Gruul's flagship. If we can take out their command and control, we might have a chance. The space around Earth became a maelstrom of energy weapons, missiles, and debris. Human and Cardassian ships alike vanished in blinding explosions as the two sides tore into each other with savage intensity. Through it all, Webb's eyes remained locked on the tactical display, searching for any sign of an advantage. He knew that somewhere out there, Jake Mercer was fighting for his life, plunging through the very battle they had started together. As the conflict raged, Webb silently vowed that at any expense, Earth would not fall. Not today. Not while he still drew breath. Webb's eyes darted between tactical displays, his mind racing. Mercer's fighter plummeted towards Earth, a trail of fire and debris marking its descent. There was no time for sentiment. The entire planet hung in the balance. "This is Webb to all orbital assets," he barked into the comm. "Execute Operation Hailstorm, now." Across Earth's orbit, a motley assortment of vessels and platforms sprang to life. Mining rigs recalibrated their drills, debris-clearing satellites redirected their tractor beams. Even derelict hulks of destroyed ships were pressed into service, their remaining power diverted to makeshift magnetic accelerators. Webb's fingers flew across his console, overriding safety protocols and redlining every system. "Fire everything!" he shouted. "Don't hold back!" The void erupted in a storm of improvised projectiles. Chunks of asteroid, twisted hull plating, and raw ore streaked towards the Cardassian fleet. The sheer volume overwhelmed their point defense systems, a wall of debris slamming into their shields. On Gruul's flagship, alarms blared as the barrage intensified. "Shields failing," a panicked officer reported. "We can't—" His words were cut short as a jagged shard of metal punched through the bridge viewport, depressurizing the compartment in an instant. Gruul's eyes widened in shock as he was sucked into the vacuum, his final thoughts a mix of rage and disbelief. The flagship's antimatter containment pods ruptured under the relentless assault. For a moment, a new star bloomed in Earth's orbit as the ship vanished in a titanic explosion. Webb allowed himself a grim smile as the Cardassian fleet dissolved into chaos. "All atmospheric and ground units fall back to defensive positions," he ordered. "Protect the population centers at all costs." On the plains of North America, Jake Mercer crawled from the smoking wreckage of his fighter. He tasted blood, his ribs screaming in protest as he dragged himself clear of the debris. In the distance, he saw the contrails of Cardassian dropships, their formations ragged and disorganized. "Webb," he croaked into his half-functional comm. "I made it. What's our status?" Static crackled, then Webb's voice came through, tight with tension. "We've bought some time, Jake, but it's about to get a whole lot worse." In the command center, Webb stared at long-range sensor data, his face ashen. The main bulk of the Galactic Armada was bearing down on Earth, a tidal wave of ships that dwarfed anything they'd faced before. He turned to his assembled staff, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and fear. "We're out of options," Webb said, his voice cold. "Prepare to execute Operation Scorched Earth. We're going to turn the entire inner system into a kill zone." Gasps and murmurs of shock rippled through the room. Webb silenced them with a raised hand. "I know what I'm asking, but it's our only chance to slow them down." He strode towards the communications array, steeling himself for the hardest sales pitch of his life. "Get me a secure line to every world leader," Webb ordered. "It's time to convince them to sign off on the unthinkable." Webb's fingers hovered over the launch controls, his breath catching in his throat. The weight of his decision pressed down on him like a physical force. He glanced at the assembled world leaders on the monitor, their faces a mix of fear and resignation. "This is our last stand," Webb said, his voice tight. "May God forgive us." He pressed the button. Across Earth and its orbital facilities, silos burst open. Retrofitted ballistic missiles streaked into the sky, their engines burning hot and bright. deep space mining drones, repurposed for this grim task, detached from their docking bays and accelerated towards the outer system. In the command center, Webb watched the tactical display as thousands of blips representing Earth's arsenal spread out across the solar system. He turned to his chief engineer. "Status on the shielded pilot ships?" "Ready for deployment, sir. They're prepping for final approach to the Kuiper Belt and Oort cloud." Webb nodded, his eyes sharp. "Send them out, and may whatever gods are listening watch over them." Hours ticked by as humanity's weapons raced to their designated positions. Webb paced the command center, pausing only to gulp down scalding coffee and bark orders into his comm unit. Finally, the moment arrived. Webb's hand shook as he keyed the detonation sequence. "All units, prepare for nuclear initiation. 3, 2, 1, execute." A staggered chain of blinding flashes erupted across the solar system. Thermonuclear fire tore through the asteroid belt, vaporizing rock and ice. In the Kuiper Belt and Oort cloud, strategically placed warheads ignited, transforming the icy debris into superheated plasma. The command center's sensors struggled to keep up with the unfolding chaos. Massive clouds of radioactive dust and charged particles expanded outward at near-relativistic speeds, a cosmic shockwave of humanity's making. "First contact with the Galactic Armada in 30 seconds, an operator called out. Webb leaned forward, his fist clenched as he gripped the edge of the console. On the main view screen, they watched as the artificial maelstrom slammed into the vanguard of the alien fleet. Massive capital ships, each larger than a terrestrial city, were engulfed by the subatomic onslaught. Their shields flared and failed, unable to cope with the sheer density of the assault. Hull plating buckled and twisted as the hyper-accelerated particles tore through metal and circuitry alike. "We're detecting massive power fluctuations across the enemy fleet," an analyst reported. "Their sensors are scrambled, comms are down." Webb allowed himself a grim smile. Phase 2. Deploy the drones. A swarm of unmanned ships surged forward, each loaded with enough thermobaric explosives to level a small country. They plunged into the heart of the reeling Cardassian fleet, detonating in a series of cataclysmic explosions. As the carnage unfolded, Jake Mercer's voice crackled over the comm. "Webb, this is Mercer. My strike force is ready to engage. Permission to launch?" "Granted," Webb replied. "Hit them hard and fast, Jake. Don't let up." Mercer's ragtag fleet of fighters and bombers streaked into the fray, pounding the disoriented Cardassian ships with relentless fury. Earth's remaining orbital defenses opened fire, adding their firepower to the melee. Admiral Grull's enraged voice cut through the static of the universal translator. "You think this changes anything, human? We will grind your world to dust!" Webb ignored the threat, focusing on the tactical display. The artificial debris fields were coalescing, forming an ever-shifting maze of radioactive pockets and electromagnetic distortions. It was working better than he dared hope. But as he watched the Galactic Armada regroup at the edges of the newly formed kill zone, Webb felt a chill run down his spine. They still vastly outnumbered Earth's forces, and the price of this temporary reprieve. Webb's eyes burned from fatigue as he stared at the holographic display, watching the chaos unfold across the solar system. The artificial debris field pulsed with radioactive energy, a deadly maze that both protected and trapped Earth's defenders. "Admiral Grull's forces are pushing through Sector 7, a tactical officer reported, her voice tight with tension. Webb nodded, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Redirect defense platforms 12 through 15. Concentrate fire on their lead ships." In the void of space, massive defense platforms pivoted, their massive cannons unleashing streams of hypervelocity projectiles. The rounds tore through the radiation-laced debris, slamming into the advancing Cardassian ships. Hulls buckled and ruptured, venting atmosphere and bodies into the vacuum. Jake Mercer's voice crackled over the comm. "Webb, we're engaging Grull's vanguard. These bastards just keep coming." Through the command center's view screens, Webb watched as Mercer's fighters darted between towering Cardassian warships. Human pilots executed impossibly tight maneuvers, their ship's engines flaring as they dodged incoming fire. "All wings, form up on me," Mercer ordered, his fighter leading the charge. "We're going for their command ship." A swarm of unmanned drones raced ahead of Mercer's squadron, their hulls packed with thermobaric warheads. They slammed into Cardassian shields, detonating in massive fireballs that momentarily blinded sensors. In the wake of the explosions, Mercer's fighters struck. They dove through gaps in the Cardassian formation, unleashing volleys of missiles at point-blank range. Ship after ship erupted in flames, debris spinning off into the radioactive haze. Webb allowed himself a grim smile, but it faded as new alerts flashed across his display. What the hell? He zoomed out, revealing a massive concentration of Armada ships punching through a weak point in the debris field. Antimatter warheads detonated in precisely timed sequences, carving a path through the radioactive cloud. It's a feint, Webb realized, cold dread settling in his stomach. Grohl's just the distraction. He keyed the comm, his voice urgent. "All units be advised. Main Armada thrust detected in Sector 12. Divert all available assets to intercept." But even as he gave the order, Webb knew it was too late. The sheer mass of the Armada's spearhead was unstoppable. They were going to break through, and Earth's remaining defenses would be outflanked. Alarms blared as a new threat materialized. A significant portion of Gruhl's fleet had broken off, accelerating on a direct course for Earth. They plowed through the weakening debris field, ignoring catastrophic damage as they closed the distance. "Mercer!" Webb shouted into the comm. "Gruhl's making a run for it! You need to stop him!" "On it," Mercer replied, his voice strained. "All fighters, new heading. We're going to clip this bastard's wings." The sky above Earth's cities lit up as Mercer's squadrons clashed with Gruhl's vanguard. Energy weapons lanced back and forth, punctuated by the staccato flashes of missile detonations. Ground-based defense batteries joined the fray, filling the upper atmosphere with a lethal web of firepower. Webb coordinated the defense from his command center, diverting resources and plugging gaps as fast as they appeared. But for every Cardassian ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. A massive explosion rocked the command center. Webb stumbled, catching himself on a console. "Report!" "Direct hit on the main power grid," an officer shouted. "We're on emergency backup." Webb looked up at the main view screen, watching as the Armada's capital ships took up positions in high orbit. Their weapons ports glowed with building energy, promising imminent devastation. "All units, brace for orbital bombardment," Webb ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of impending doom. "This is not the end. We will endure. We will survive. We will fight back." As the first salvos rained down on Earth's surface, Webb turned to his staff. "Get me a secure line to all remaining military commanders. We're going to ground, and we're taking this fight to the streets if we have to." The battle for Earth had entered its final desperate phase, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. The command center shook violently as another salvo of Cardassian weapons fire struck Earth's dwindling defenses. Webb stumbled, catching himself on a console as klaxons blared and warning lights flashed across every screen. "Status report!" he barked, his eyes scanning the tactical displays. A young officer, her face streaked with grime and sweat, looked up from her station. "Sir, we've lost another 3 defense platforms. The Armada is pushing through our outer perimeter." Webb's eyes hardened as he processed the information. He turned to Jake Mercer, who stood nearby, his flight suit scorched and torn. "We're out of options, Jake," Webb said, his voice low. "Conventional tactics won't cut it anymore." Mercer nodded, his eyes hard. "What's the play, sir?" Webb leaned in close, lowering his voice further. "We hit them where it hurts. They're civilian centers." Mercer's eyebrows shot up, but he didn't flinch. "How?" "Two-pronged attack," Webb explained rapidly. "I've got an R&D team working on retrofitting a captured Cardassian explorer with one of their warp drives. We'll rig it as a massive bomb, aim it right at their homeworld." "And the second prong?" Mercer asked. Webb's eyes glinted dangerously. "That's where you come in. I need you to assemble a strike team, our best pilots, our last nukes, and every piece of alien tech we've managed to salvage. Mercer nodded, already mentally cataloging potential candidates. Consider it done. As Webb turned to brief his staff, Mercer strode from the command center. He keyed his comm unit, his voice sharp and urgent. Attention all fighter wings. This is Commander Mercer. I need the following pilots to report to Hangar Bay 7 immediately. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. In a makeshift lab, human scientists and engineers worked feverishly to integrate the alien warp drive into the Explorer's systems. Sparks flew as they welded and soldered, the air thick with the acrid smell of ozone and burning circuitry. Meanwhile, in Hangar Bay 7, Mercer briefed his hand-picked team. 24 of Earth's finest pilots stood before him, their faces a mix of exhaustion and relentless drive. This is a one-way trip, Mercer said bluntly. We're going to hit the Armada's central command with everything we've got. Our ships have been outfitted with scavenged cloaking devices. They won't see us coming. He paused, looking each pilot in the eye. Any questions? Silence fell over the hangar. Then, one by one, the pilots saluted. As Earth's cities burned under the relentless Cardassian assault, Webb received word that the Explorer was ready. He input the coordinates for the Cardassian homeworld himself, his fingers steady despite the weight of what he was about to do. Launch the diversion, he ordered. What remained of Earth's defense fleet surged forward in a desperate attack. The Armada's outer patrols turned to meet the threat, creating a momentary gap in their coverage. Now! Webb shouted. The Explorer shot forward, its modified warp drive engaging with a flash of impossible light. In an instant, it vanished from Earth's solar system, hurtling towards its apocalyptic destination. Moments later, Mercer's squadron decloaked in the heart of the Armada's fleet. Their ships, dripping with jury-rigged weapons, opened fire without hesitation. Nuclear warheads detonated in blinding flashes, tearing through the unprepared Cardassian ships. Mercer's voice crackled over the comm as he led the assault. All units, engage at will. Make every shot count. The Armada's carefully orchestrated attack dissolved into chaos. Capital ships, their hulls breached by the unexpected onslaught, vented atmosphere and bodies into the void. Secondary explosions rippled through their ranks as weapon systems overloaded and detonated. In the command center, Webb watched the tactical display with fierce intensity. A new alert flashed across his screen. The Explorer had reached its target. Without hesitation, Webb activated the remote detonation sequence. Billions of miles away, at the edge of Cardassian space, the Explorer's antimatter payload ignited. Space itself seemed to scream as an artificial singularity burst into existence. The Cardassian homeworld vanished in an instant, swallowed by the voracious maw of a newborn black hole. The event horizon expanded rapidly, consuming everything in its path. Nearby planets shattered, their fragments drawn inexorably into the cosmic maelstrom. Webb watched in stunned silence as the heart of the Galactic Council's territory was transformed into a seething vortex of destruction. Panic spread through the Armada as news of the catastrophe reached them. Their precise formations broke apart, ships colliding in their haste to escape the growing singularity. Mercer's voice cut through the chaos on the comm. Webb, we've done it! Their command structure is in shambles! But even as he spoke, the Armada began to regroup. A wall of energy weapons fire lashed out, catching Mercer's squadron in a deadly crossfire. Evasive maneuvers, Mercer shouted, but it was too late. Webb watched helplessly as Mercer's pilots were picked off one by one, their cloaking devices useless against the sheer volume of fire. Soon, only Mercer's ship remained, tumbling out of control with its engines crippled. Jake, Webb began, but Mercer cut him off. Save it, sir. Mercer's voice was calm despite the situation. I've got one last trick up my sleeve. With the last of his ship's power, Mercer activated a hidden device, a compact antimatter reactor salvaged from Cardassian wreckage. As his ship disintegrated around him, Mercer triggered the device. The resulting explosion expanded the Singularity's event horizon dramatically, its radius increasing at a terrifying rate. Alarms blared throughout the command center as the sensors registered the approaching wavefront. Webb knew what was coming. "All personnel, evacuate to the deepest shelters immediately," he ordered, his voice steady despite the circumstances. As Earth's population retreated underground, Webb remained at his post. He watched impassively as the Singularity's event horizon reached their solar system, warping and distorting everything it touched. The planet's crust began to buckle and tear. Oceans boiled away in an instant as the fundamental forces holding matter together were overwhelmed. In his final moments, Webb activated the emergency broadcast system. His voice rang out across all frequencies, a last defiant message to the cosmos. "Remember us?" Then, with a sense of finality, Webb sealed the blast doors of his bunker. The Singularity's inexorable advance consumed Earth, ripping apart the cradle of humanity at the most fundamental level. As the remnants of both fleets were drawn into the cosmic storm, Webb sat in the darkness of his sealed chamber. He closed his eyes, knowing that humanity's last act had forever changed the face of the galaxy. In their final moments, they had extracted a price from their enemies that would echo through the ages.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.